First off, let me preface this. I'm going to give you my twist on a couple things, and I might know a little bit extra than the average person knows, but I also want to preface this with Google sent me an email to monetize this junk, and I just did it. I'm not really trying to make money off this crap, so I don't really care about it. Tell you the truth, I'm 99.999% more concerned about the moves I make personally than this. And way I look at it, any nickel I get anywhere, who cares, you know? But I'm gonna give you my take on this, so many things, and I think a lot of people, I don't know, maybe I think a little different from most people, and sometimes it comes in to play. Um, and I know my background. I usually work for a very aggressive type entrepreneur. Don't fit into the corporate, but I do a lot of accounting work and more complicated analytical work, as some people would be surprised, you know. But I don't talk or act like that, obviously. I'm going to give you something, and I can't prove this. I can't prove this. I heard this word of mouth, and I heard it's probably good information I got. And this is something that's probably going to come up, because if you piss off the wrong people, you're done. That's really how it goes. If you're in with the right people, you're fine. And, you know, give an example like Mark Rich, you know, if you heard of him, the guy who was in the oil. You know, he was pardoned by President Bill Clinton when he left office, you know. So, I mean, that's how it goes. But in the 1920s, 29, when they had the stock market crash, I was looking for a story on the internet, and it really doesn't reference anything about what I was getting to. Investors and brokers and, you know, people that had a lot of wealth, that lost a lot of wealth, did they really jump out of windows from, you know, 20, 30 stories up in New York City? Actually, what I was told is that a lot of them were pushed. It was not suicide. I know, according to this story, it's telling you that, you know, people wanted that to believe that because, you know, they had a vengeful type attitude in their head. But, you know, I was told a lot of them were pushed, and it wasn't by ordinary people. It was by more powerful people that lost money. And you piss off the wrong people, stuff happens. That is the reality behind it. You know, people can call that conspiracy or whatever. That's really how things happen. A lot of the stories went with the 1929 crash, that people lost money in the crash. Their attitude was, you know, my life savings is gone. These people deserve to die. And that very much is a hint as to what really happened to them. They were killed. They were killed. And this is what I was told. And, you know, I really can't give you any kind of reference on the net about this. So, I think it's true, though. I think it's true. Because, you know, I'm looking at something, you know, Bernie Madoff's son. And, you know, I'm not even saying anything against Mark Madoff or anything like that. But 2 years after his father, Bernie Madoff, went to prison, supposedly Mark Madoff hanged himself with a dog leash in an apartment in a living room while his 2-year-old son was sleeping in the next bedroom. To me, you know, in my mind, maybe it's because I'm too suspicious or whatever it is, I think this guy was definitely killed. I mean, as some kind of vengeance or whatever. I don't know. And, you know, it's never like an ordinary person. You know, an ordinary person would probably be standing out there, you know, with a sign or bitching or something or whatever. You know, they wouldn't do anything. But the people that, you know, have more power, they're very shrewd, they keep quiet, and they do things like this. So I think that's what happened in the 20s, and you're probably going to see things like this happen probably in the future if the markets really start breaking down. You know, you piss off the wrong people, you're in big trouble. This is on Mark Madoff's wife Stephanie, who was in Florida with the other son. She became concerned about her husband after he sent an email to her Friday night or early Saturday morning that someone should check on a 2-year-old child with him. You know, to me, this looks like a hands down killing, not a suicide. That's what it looks like to me. You know, maybe I'm just too suspicious, but normally, you know, I usually tend to be more correct. You know, I tend to be more correct than most people, and I think maybe a lot of people I'm preaching to right now would see that. You know, this does look suspicious. A person would hang himself in a living room with a dog leash, while, you know, that's a very difficult act to do, right? I mean, you think the person would do it some other way, while their 2-year-old son was in the next room. I don't know. That really doesn't. I don't buy that at all. So it relates back to the what happened in the 20s. A lot of these people, they didn't commit suicide, and I'm not saying to go do anything, but when you piss off people that have a lot of money and a lot of power, they tend to go back at you in different ways. So I think there's a lot of things that are hidden from the public, you know, stories that you get out of the news wires of what really went on. Um, this guy, Robert Vesco, I don't know. You know, I was told, I believe it though, because from when I checked on him, I'm related to this guy in one way. But my uncle used to tell me about him too. He was a CPA in New York, in Manhattan, in a Chrysler building, and had a lot of connections in New York. And he used to talk about him. And but you know what I think got him in trouble? It wasn't all the stuff they were accusing him of, because they can easily have assassinated this guy a million times over from all the times he was a fugitive. I mean, there's so many ways. I mean, it's a big ruse. They come out in the public, you know, he's the biggest fugitive from justice ever and all this kind of stuff. And the thing is, all the while he's working with other elements, you know. And I mean, you know, I know here he befriended Donald Nixon, a nephew of Richard Nixon, and gave him $200,000 in the Nixon campaign. Well, this was all political, you know. This was all political. I mean, it was like the one Democratic camp found something to smear Nixon, so they brought this out. But this Vesco was always working with the U.S. government at all times. I'm sure of this. That's why he never got in trouble. But what I think he got in trouble for was when he went against the medical industry. He supposedly had this wonder drug, and I don't know if it's true or not, but you know, from like my research, a lot of things I'm finding out there is a lot more truth to these things than people think. And you know, the medical industry is worse than it's a bigger racket than Las Vegas casinos or Atlantic City casinos by far. You know, they get $200,000 to $500,000 per patient for cancers, and AIDS they get $20,000 a year times you know, every many years that person lives. So if you got 50,000 people on AIDS medicine times 20,000, that's $1 billion a year going on ad infinitum. So he, you know, when he did this is what really got him in trouble more than anything, you know. And that's when because all the other stuff that was going on for all the years before, in my mind, I'm 100% sure it was in coordination with other elements in, you know, in the United States that were in power, and they could have, you know, I know there's conspiracy theories about the CIA and all this stuff, but I mean, it's all really a conspiracy of money. I'd rather really look at it that way. When there's money, people just will act accordingly to gain more for themselves. So I think where he stepped on the wrong toes here was actually the this wonder drug, and supposedly it did work. You know, I heard about this, and I think that's what actually got him in trouble more than anything. But I'm going to get on to one other twist on something. People are fearful of a market crash, and that's one reason they're getting into the physical metals. And I'm going to say one way they're probably going to do it. If I was the Illuminati, what would I do? This is how I would do it. This is kind of a recent, I'm using this word Illuminati, but say for instance I was the one that wanted to rip off everybody in the United States out of their 401ks, IRAs, and savings accounts and everything, and there was an impending crash of the dollar coming up. How would I do it? I'd blame it on the Iranians. What else? right? That's how you do it, right? You blame it on the guy that's your biggest enemy right now because they're trading oil and everything except U.S. dollars, and you know they're enemies of Israel, right? So blame it on them. So an EMP threat. This was a story that was pretty recently about an Iranian warship coming to the U.S. coast. Many real Americans don't realize how vulnerable our nation is to an EMP attack by terrorist nation states or rogue actors. This would literally shut down the entire banking industry in Wall Street. You'd be done. This is how you really could lose your money, and this would be a great scam. So, if I think of it, I don't know, maybe they're stupid, but if I was them, this is exactly how I would do it. This is exactly how I would do it. Now, the fact that I'm not them, and I'd have to assume this is how they're going to screw me over. So I don't like that. So I'm probably going to, wait a little bit longer, but I think I'm getting more and more cautious about pulling money out, and I'm not trusting this whole deal because the way to really trash the U.S. dollar and the way to trash all the markets is before the plug's going to go down, you got to blame it on somebody else. And I guarantee you, these would be the perfect ones to blame it on. That's what I think is going to come down. Now, as far as exactly when, I don't know. It could be coming down this year. It could be coming down this year. But there's another flip side to this. The powers that be, there's a lot of different things that go on. There's powerful people in New York City that would lose a lot of wealth too. I mean, they would lose billions. I mean, individuals. So, as something like this came down, I think it's like all the people on the top wouldn't be in on it. That's how I would think it would come down. But this I should point out, you should never be against all the elite. There's different elements in the United States that are 100% on the side of the United States. They're not in the camp of Maurice Strong or George Soros where they hate the United States. And I know maybe they're scammers or whatever the hell they are, but they're scamming for the United States, okay? That's the way I look at it. So they're not so bad. But one reason you should be fearful of electronic markets, I think, is something like this. This would be something they would pull out of left field. And it's a very good scam. Nobody's thinking of it. So that's the thing you got to watch for, what nobody thinks of. That's my main point. And that's another reason for going more and more into the physical metals. Despite seeing a downturn and all this garbage about, silver's in a bubble, gold's in a bubble. I think most people on this, whoever listens to this, probably doesn't listen to that anyway. But one thing you should be fearful of is contrived scam. This would be better than 911. So, you think they're going to do it? I think so.